I want you to imagine something. Imagine a man waking up at 5 in the morning. The alarm rings. He opens his eyes. The room is quiet. Nobody is watching. Nobody is applauding. Nobody is encouraging him. The world has not yet given him success. The bank account is still small. The dream is still far away. The problems are still there. The bills are still waiting. The doubts are still whispering. And in that moment, before his feet touch the floor, before the world tells him who he is, he tells himself who he will become. Let me tell you something. Most people think success begins with money. Success begins before money. Most people think success begins with opportunity. Success begins before opportunity. Most people think success begins when someone believes in them. Success begins before that. Success begins with words. Words repeated long enough become beliefs. Beliefs repeated long enough become actions. Acts repeated long enough become habits. Habits repeated long enough become character. And character repeated long enough becomes destiny. Think about this for a moment. Every great life is built twice. First in the mind, then in reality. The architect sees the building before the workers touch the ground. The farmer sees the harvest before planting the seed. The successful person sees the future before the future arrives. Years ago, I learned something that changed my understanding of human potential. A mentor asked me a simple question. He said, "What are you saying to yourself every morning?" I laughed. I thought it was a strange question. I expected him to ask about business. I expected him to ask about goals. I expected him to ask about investments. Instead, he asked about words. Because he understood something most people never understand. The conversation you have with yourself is the most important conversation you will ever have. You can escape negative people. You can leave a negative environment. You can quit a bad job, but you cannot escape your own voice. You carry it everywhere. When you wake up, when you drive, when you work, when you struggle, when you fail, when you succeed, that voice follows you. And if that voice is constantly telling you that you're weak, unlucky, incapable, behind, broken, or destined for average results, then eventually your actions begin obeying those instructions. Because the mind is always listening. The mind believes repetition, not truth. Repetition. If you hear something enough times, your subconscious starts treating it like reality. That is why some people spend years unconsciously programming themselves for failure. Every morning, they wake up saying things like, "Nothing ever works for me. Life is unfair. I am too late. I am not talented enough. I don't have what it takes." And then they wonder why they don't move with confidence. Because confidence cannot grow in a mind filled with self-defeating instructions. Let me tell you about a man I once met. He wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. He wasn't exceptionally gifted. He worked long hours, lived in a small apartment, had experienced setback after setback. One business failed. Then another. Most people looked at him and saw failure. But every morning he had a ritual. Every morning, without exception, he repeated powerful statements to himself. At first it felt silly. At first it felt unnatural. At first nothing changed. But he continued day after day, week after week, month after month. And eventually something remarkable happened. His circumstances did not change first. His identity changed first. And when identity changes, behavior follows. When behavior follows, results follow. The first sentence he repeated every morning was this: "I am responsible for my life." Now think about how powerful that is. Not the government, not the economy, not luck, not circumstances, not other people. Responsibility. Here is what most people don't understand. Responsibility is not punishment. Responsibility is power. The moment you accept responsibility, you reclaim control. The victim waits. The responsible person acts. The victim complains. The responsible person adjusts. The victim blames. The responsible person builds. And every successful person eventually reaches a moment where they stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what can I do about it? That question changes everything, because your future does not improve when blame increases. Your future improves when responsibility increases. I learned something years ago. The most successful people I have ever met were not obsessed with excuses. They were obsessed with solutions. Different mindset, different language, different results. The second sentence he repeated every morning was this: today I will become a little better. Notice he didn't say perfect. He didn't say extraordinary. He didn't say world class. He said a little better, because success is rarely dramatic. Success is usually invisible. A tree does not grow overnight. A body does not transform overnight. A business does not explode overnight. A life does not change overnight. But small improvements compound. One page read every day, one workout every day, one lesson learned every day, one disciplined choice every day, one courageous action every day. And after a year, people call it luck. After 5 years, people call it talent. After 10 years, people call it greatness. But it was never luck. It was compound interest applied to human behavior. Think about this. If you improve just 1% every day, who are you after 5 years? Not the same person, not even close. Most people underestimate what consistency can do. They worship intensity. But consistency is where the magic lives. Anybody can be motivated for a day. Anybody can be excited for a week. Anybody can chase a goal for a month. But can you stay committed when nobody notices? Can you stay disciplined when results are invisible? Can you keep planting seeds when the field looks empty? That is where lives change. The third sentence he repeated every morning was this: I will not let fear decide my future. Now listen carefully, fear is normal. Every successful person feels fear. Every entrepreneur, every athlete, every leader, every creator, every dreamer. Fear is universal. The difference is not who feels fear. The difference is who obeys fear. There are people listening right now who have postponed their dreams for years. Not because they lack ability, not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack opportunity, but because fear became the decision maker. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of embarrassment, fear of being misunderstood, fear of starting over, fear of losing, fear of not being enough. And slowly, fear steals years, then decades, then entire lives. One day, a person wakes up and realizes they have become an expert at avoiding risk, but they never became an expert at living. Pain is unavoidable, but there are two kinds of pain: the pain of discipline and the pain of regret. Discipline weighs ounces. Regret weighs tons. The pain of waking up early, the pain of learning, the pain of practicing, the pain of growing. Those pains are temporary. But regret is a different story. Regret follows people into old age. Regret whispers at night. Regret asks difficult questions. What if you had tried? What if you had started? What if you had believed? What if you had continued? What if you had trusted yourself? And those questions become heavy, very heavy. That is why every morning you must remind yourself, I will not let fear decide my future, because courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is movement despite fear. The fourth sentence he repeated every morning was this: everything I need can be developed. Now that sentence transformed his life because it destroyed one of the most dangerous beliefs in the world. The belief that people are fixed, that talent is fixed, that intelligence is fixed, that confidence is fixed, that leadership is fixed, that success belongs only to special people. Let me tell you something. The greatest lie many people believe is this: they have it and I don't. No, they developed it. Confidence developed, discipline developed, communication developed, leadership developed, skill developed, knowledge developed, influence developed. Everything grows. Everything expands. Everything improves through practice. Think about the child learning to walk. They fall again and again and again, yet nobody calls them a failure. Nobody says, walking isn't for you. Nobody says, you don't have natural talent. Why? Because everyone understands growth takes repetition, yet adults forget this lesson. Adults try once, follow once, struggle once, and suddenly conclude they are incapable. No, you are simply in the early chapters of growth. The seed is not a tree yet. But that doesn't mean it cannot become one. The fifth sentence he repeated every morning was this: my future will be greater than my past. What a powerful declaration, especially for people carrying disappointment, especially for people carrying mistakes, especially for people carrying failure, especially for people carrying heartbreak. Because many people live looking backward. They keep replaying old chapters, old pain, old losses, old regrets, old embarrassments, old failures. And eventually the past becomes larger than the future. But successful people reverse that equation. Their future becomes larger than their past. Their vision becomes larger than their wounds. Their purpose becomes larger than their excuses. Their possibilities become larger than their fears. And when that happens, energy changes. Everything changes. Because hope is powerful. Human beings can survive almost anything when they possess hope. History proves this. Life proves this. Ordinary people prove this every single day. I remember hearing about a man who lost nearly everything. Business collapsed. Debt piled up. Friends disappeared. Confidence shattered. For months, he felt trapped, like life was closing in around him. Every morning, he looked in the mirror and saw failure. Then one day he made a decision, not a dramatic decision, not a glamorous decision, a simple decision. He decided to stop speaking defeat over his life. Every morning he began declaring possibility instead of limitation. Every morning, every single morning. Even when he didn't believe it completely. Even when circumstances contradicted it. Even when evidence was missing. He continued, and slowly his actions started matching his words. Then his habits started matching his actions. Then his results started matching his habits. And one day people called him successful, but what they didn't see was the private battle, the battle of identity, the battle of self-talk, the battle that happened in silence before success became visible, because every great victory happens twice, internally, then externally. And here's what most people don't understand. The morning is sacred. The morning is not just another part of the day. The morning is the steering wheel. If you lose control of the morning, you often lose control of the direction. The first thoughts matter. The first words matter. The first beliefs matter. The first emotional state matters because momentum is real. A negative beginning often creates a negative pattern. A powerful beginning often creates a powerful pattern. So imagine waking up tomorrow before checking your phone, before checking messages, before checking the news, before listening to the world's opinion. You sit quietly for a moment, you breathe, you focus, and you say, I am responsible for my life. Today I will become a little better. I will not let fear decide my future. Everything I need can be developed. My future will be greater than my past, and then you repeat them again, and again, and again. Not because they are magic words, but because they are directions. Because every day your mind is asking one question, who am I becoming? And every morning you have an opportunity to answer. You have an opportunity to teach your mind where to focus. You have an opportunity to remind yourself that success is not an event. Success is a process built one morning at a time, one decision at a time, one disciplined action at a time, one courageous step at a time. And when you begin to understand the extraordinary power hidden inside ordinary mornings, you start realizing that the distance between the life you have and the life you want may not be found in some giant breakthrough at all. It may be found in those quiet moments before sunrise, when the world is silent and you are standing face to face with the person in the mirror, deciding whether today will be another day of excuses or another day of transformation. And that's where something remarkable begins to happen, because the mind starts searching for evidence to support the words you've been feeding it. And once that process begins, you start noticing opportunities that were always there. You start taking actions you once avoided. You start carrying yourself differently. And people around you begin to sense a change they can't quite explain. For years, they thought the difference was talent. They thought the difference was education. They thought the difference was luck. But the real difference was attention. The successful person was seeing possibilities while everyone else was seeing obstacles. The successful person was seeing lessons while everyone else was seeing problems. The successful person was seeing opportunities while everyone else was seeing reasons to quit. And it all began with what they repeatedly told themselves. Let me tell you something. The mind is like fertile soil. It does not care what you plant. It simply grows what receives attention. Plant doubt, and doubt grows. Plant excuses, and excuses grow. Plant fear, and fear grows. Plant courage, and courage grows. Plant responsibility, and responsibility grows. Plant possibility, and possibility grows. The question is not whether your mind is growing something. The question is what exactly you're growing every single morning. I remember speaking with a young man who felt completely stuck, not because he lacked ability, not because he lacked intelligence. He was stuck because he had created an identity around struggle. Think about that. An identity around struggle. Every conversation centered around problems. Every story centered around setbacks. Every explanation centered around limitations. Without realizing it, he had become emotionally attached to being the victim of his circumstances. And that's a dangerous place to live. Because once your identity attaches itself to your limitations, growth starts feeling uncomfortable, successes starts feeling unfamiliar, progress starts feeling strange. The mind wants to return to what is familiar, even when what is familiar is painful. That's why change is difficult. Not because change is impossible, because identity resists it. Years ago, I learned a lesson that never left me. Your life changes when your identity changes, not before. A person who identifies as disciplined behaves differently. A person who identifies as a learner behaves differently. A person who identifies as responsible behaves differently. A person who identifies as resilient behaves differently. The greatest transformation is never external. It is internal. Because once you become a different person inside, your behavior starts aligning with that new identity. Think about a marathon runner. The race isn't won on race day. The race is won through hundreds of mornings. Cold mornings, dark mornings. Uncomfortable mornings. Mornings when motivation is absent. Mornings when excuses sound reasonable. Mornings when staying in bed feels easier, and yet they get up. Why? Because eventually discipline becomes identity. And when discipline becomes identity, the decision gets easier. Most people are waiting for motivation. Successful people build systems. Most people are waiting to feel inspired. Successful people learn to act before inspiration arrives. Most people negotiate with their goals. Successful people commit to them. Here's what most people don't understand. You don't become successful the day you reach your goal. You become successful on the days you choose not to quit. That's when success is really formed. Not when the trophy arrives. Not when the applause arrives. Not when the money arrives. Success is being built during the invisible seasons. The seasons nobody talks about. The seasons where you're doing the work and seeing no evidence. The seasons where you're improving, but nobody notices. The seasons where you're growing, but the results haven't caught up yet. Those seasons test people. Those seasons separate dreamers from builders. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman working 2 jobs, exhausted, overwhelmed, financially stressed. Every day felt like survival. Every week looked exactly the same. She had dreams, big dreams, but she felt trapped. One day she heard a simple idea. Change your mornings and eventually you'll change your life. At first she dismissed it. How could a few morning habits change anything? Her problems were real. Her responsibilities were real. Her struggles were real. But she decided to experiment. Every morning, she woke up 30 minutes earlier, not 3 hours, not some dramatic transformation. 30 minutes. She began reading, reflecting, learning, speaking empowering words to herself, writing goals, visualizing possibilities. And nothing happened. For a week, then 2 weeks, then a month, her bank account didn't suddenly explode. Life didn't suddenly become easy. But something was changing. Her thinking. And once thinking changes, actions change. She started making better decisions. She started learning new skills. She started meeting different people. She started taking opportunities she once ignored. Years later, people looked at her success and assumed something lucky happened. No, the miracle happened quietly. Morning by morning, choice by choice, thought by thought, because the compound effect is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. People understand compound interest in money, but they ignore compound interest in character. Every day you are either strengthening yourself or weakening yourself. There is no neutral. Every day your habits are voting. Every day your actions are casting ballots. The question is simple. Who are your habits voting for? The future leader, the future entrepreneur, the future author, the future athlete, the future version of you that you've always dreamed of becoming? Or are your habits voting for comfort, for procrastination, for distraction, for excuses? Because habits are not isolated events. They are architects. Kieket architects. Bearding your future while you're busy living in the present. I learned something years ago from an older mentor. He said, most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10. Think about that. 1 year feels short, 10 years feels long. But 10 years is simply a collection of ordinary days. And ordinary days become extraordinary lives when they are used wisely. Imagine speaking those 5 sentences every morning for 10 years. Imagine starting every day by reinforcing responsibility. Imagine reinforcing courage. Imagine reinforcing growth. Imagine reinforcing possibility. Imagine reinforcing hope. Do you think that person remains the same? Impossible. The mind cannot stay unchanged under consistent instruction. That's why repetition matters. People hear something once and expect transformation. Transformation doesn't work that way. A farmer doesn't plant a seed once and then dig it up every morning to check progress. He trusts the process. He waters consistently. He protects consistently. He nurtures consistently. Then eventually growth appears. And growth often appears suddenly after a long period of invisibility. Think about bamboo. For years it appears as if nothing is happening. Nothing visible. Nothing dramatic. Nothing impressive. Then one day growth explodes upward. But the explosion was not sudden. The preparation was simply hidden. Many people quit during hidden seasons. Many people abandon dreams during invisible growth. Many people stop 1 chapter before the breakthrough because they mistake lack of evidence for lack of progress. Those are not the same thing. Just because you cannot see growth does not mean growth is absent. A child grows while sleeping. An investment grows quietly. Character grows privately. Wisdom grows silently. The most important growth often happens where nobody can see it, including you. That's why faith in the process matters. Not blind faith, earned faith. Faith built through understanding principles. And principles never change. Effort compounds, learning compounds, discipline compounds, confidence compounds, courage compounds, Integrity compounds. Everything worthwhile compounds. And every morning is another opportunity to make a deposit. I want you to think about the person you could become, not the person you were, not the person others expect you to be, the person you could become. That version of you exists as potential right now. Maybe hidden, maybe undeveloped, maybe waiting, but it's there. A stronger version, a wiser version, a more disciplined version, a more courageous version, a more capable version. The tragedy of life is not lacking potential. The tragedy is leaving potential unused. Imagine reaching the end of your journey and meeting the person you could have become. Think about that for a moment. The discipline they developed, the confidence they built, the goals they achieved, the lives they impacted, the example they became, and then imagine realizing that person was available all along. But they required different choices, different habits, different standards.